If you can relate to any of these memes, one way or another, then this episode is for you. That's right, we had to talk about it. The shade that's been going on these here internet. Let's talk about it, ladies. Hey, ladies, it is so great to see y'all on this day, whatever day our guests are watching. We are happy to come before you once more with another amazing topic. We're excited to talk about this one because this one's a little personal, so got a lot to say. Lately, we know it's no surprise. We've heard all the trends. We know that women are delaying childbearing, pursuing career. Before, it was primarily considered to be an upper class decision to be able to delay childbearing until usually your early 30s is when people used to start to have children. Now, I could definitely tell you personally, I have a lot of patients who are in their late 30s, early 40s, who are having their children, and it is across all social sectors. So across all ethnicity, across all economic brackets, women are having children later. So needless to say, there are a lot more women who are not pregnant when we go to the girlfriends outings or when we go to the social events. Mm-hmm. And I know I've heard this statement before. You want to understand because you're not a mom. So we're going to talk about that statement and what that statement means. We are happy this evening. We have two special guests on the couch with us. We have Kendra Sims, who is a licensed clinical social worker, joining us from the West Coast, and on the East Coast, we have Dr. Marie Louis, who is joining us as well. She's a family medicine physician, so we are going to talk about this topic. So ladies, have you heard that statement ever before? Have you encountered that statement?
Many times.
Ever. Never. I've never heard it. It was so unfamiliar. I have to listen again.
So tell me, Kendra, under what circumstances have you heard that statement mentioned?
I hear it. It's kind of hard to like pinpoint specifically, but people always. What I hear a lot is, "Oh, just wait till you have kids. Oh, if you're tired now, then just wait till you have kids. Oh, girl, be glad you don't have kids yet." Mm-hmm. It's like it's either a warning or preparation. So if I'm physically exhausted, they just add it on to it.
You know, that's actually a really good point, and that kind of is very much related. I know that I've heard the comments before that you don't understand what exhaustion is until you have children. And I do understand that before people start writing me letters and messages, I do understand that having kids is the hardest job on the entire earth. We absolutely get that. But are you shading folks? Is it a shade when people are saying, girl, you may be tired, but your complaints ain't really nothing because you ain't got no kids. So you really don't understand what exhaustion means. What do you think, Dr. Lee?
No, I mean, I definitely think during residency, this came up a lot. One time in particular, I remember it was around the time where they were redoing the whole 80-hour work week. So we had to figure out how to retool our call schedule, right, to make everyone fit. So at one point I was like, well, you know what, instead of doing our call where you come in, you come in that day, that morning, and leave the next morning, why don't we just do a night shift, right? A night shift, you come in, do night float, all that. And then immediately, two people in the group who had kids are like, but what about my kids? I'm like, well, you're not going to see your kids when you're on call anyway, right? If you were here all day or do a night shift. They go, you don't understand, you don't have kids. I'm like, but we all have to do this, So I think sometimes what frustrated me was people think that, you can't, because you have a job that you need to do, that you always have to, kind of overlook the fact that we all have to sacrifice, right? So me giving up like my time, my night shift, if I do night shift, I think it's just as important as, if you want to hang out with your kids. It's not one's more important than the other, but all of a sudden I just didn't understand because they had kids. Like, so yeah, so I really think they kind of sometimes you feel like your needs, what you have, are downplayed, right? Mm-hmm. Because it's not the same, you're not caring for someone else, but caring for yourself is important too, right? So
Right.
That's
Absolutely.
important.
So is
Yeah.
there a little
So
bit of a double standard? Is there a little bit of a double standard when it comes to, as you mentioned, Dr. Louis, just sort of making the sacrifice in terms of being on call, taking on certain jobs, taking on certain assignments, that the expectation is that the person who's single without kids should be able to take on the extra duties or should not be complaining about the extra duties, or the expectation that you may also, this is one that comes up sometimes, that you have excess funds because you are the one without kids. So you don't understand the restriction of finances or the restriction of time. Is it possible to be single without kids and exhausted?
yes.
Hello.
Yes.
In case you're wondering, that does exist. A couple of things were crossing my mind. It reminds me of, I remember someone I'm related to. She said to me one day, I was in a lot of pain in my lower back. It was excruciating. And she looked at me and she was just like, "Oh, girl, you don't know nothing about no back pain." Mind you, I literally have a chronic pain diagnosis.
Right.
Like, quit playing with me. And so, so as I'm listening to that, it's kind of just like, you have your perception and that's okay, but your perception is not my reality in terms of what I experience. But in relation to the other part of your comment, I have a few colleagues in different roles that I'm in, and some of them are like, okay, they some people feel like they get shown favoritism. It's like, oh well, they have to go pick up their kids so they can leave early, but it's like we show up at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
I want to go home. Oh, I want to go pick up my lunch.
Right.
You know, and I'm
Take care of
I'm
my
using it as a
car,
joke,
a whole lot of things. Yeah.
yeah, and I'm using it as a joke, but I do understand the, you know, like you said, the amazing sacrifice. But life is hard for most of us. I don't want to generalize it and say all, but people have stuff. Even if they're not necessarily carrying it on their hip, they're carrying it in their neck, they're carrying it on their knees, they're carrying something. And so you have it's okay to say, oh, I wish I, remembered what it was like to not have a child. Because sometimes I get the, oh man, if I would have never had kids and I'd be, oh, Kendra, you're going this, that, and the third. It's like, so are you excited about your child or do you not want them? I don't know. Is it both?
Right. That is so true. I do get that comment often as well, in terms of the comparison, like, oh boy, life was so much better when I didn't have kids, or I had so much flexibility in order to do things or travel. Girl, you should be traveling so much more. And it's interesting because the same people before they have the kids also complained of the exhaustion of being exhausted, also complained of not having enough time to do the things that they want to do, or being challenged financially. But somehow after having kids, it turns into, oh, you really don't understand what it's like. And I get that. I don't understand what it's like because I don't have kids. So I'm not going to pretend that I even, barely even understand what it actually is like. But there is now this trending of the aunties, because we do know that a lot of the single women in the family, the close friends, end up being these amazing aunties who are babysitting, right? Exactly. Who are babysitting, who are helping to be a part of the village of the woman or the couple who has a child. And so I like that that's now a trend on social media, that people are embracing this role as being the auntie, like the bad auntie. We have so many adjectives now. Hashtag, baddest auntie on our earth. Hashtag that auntie, hashtag, so it's really nice to see that we're now embracing the role, because the truth of the matter is that there are a lot of women who are really truly a part of the villages that really help to support the raising of the kids. And so, yeah, we may not fully understand what it's like, but we probably had a few sleepovers, we probably babysitted, we probably have help supported you in some way, or given in some way to try to help support the raising of your child. Should this change? Should we, we do understand their perspective and we do understand our perspective. Like, I like what Kendra said, we all are living in this life and life is hard, right? So should this dialogue change? Should those comments change? Or do you feel like it's justified? Are we being oversensitive? Are we being overly sensitive?
I don't think we're necessarily being overly sensitive. I think it's a matter of, I think just as you're saying, this whole dynamic and how we view raising kids is changing. I think that needs to kind of come in when those comments come, right? So it's not you wouldn't understand because you don't have kids. It could be something where you say, hey, is there something, would you be able to help out, right? Or could we do this? Even in the work scenario, looking at that person, okay, maybe if you understand that, oh yeah, Marie, you might want to spend time with your family too, would you be willing to, take this day so I can have this day, right? Not just saying I need this day because I need to be with my kids, or I need this day to be with the family, but acknowledging that I may have that too, right? So if it comes in more as a, we understand each other type of thing, I think people would be more open to saying, okay, let's compromise, right? Versus coming in saying, no, the call schedule can't be the way it is because how about, because you have to accommodate this thing over here and nothing else, so I think that's bringing up that whole compromise thing, and how can we help versus just Xing us out and saying it's just, us versus them, so hopefully that is something that translates into, I mean, in medicine's kind of tough, but I mean, definitely there's room for it though, for that to happen.
Absolutely. I love the idea of the compromise, because in real life we're here together. And so we're surviving in this world in tandem with my kids, with your kids, with no kids, with extra children. And so I think it's important to know that we can live beside each other, and it can be cohesive. Like, I don't have to have children to be compassionate. I don't have to have children to be understanding. Here I am, a social worker. My job is to literally help other people's children all day, every day. I have an understanding for when life is hard, or for when parenting is overwhelming, and my job is literally a result of that. And so I think it should just give both sides some grace. I do understand that your life is difficult, and I can hear you. But I also, at the same time, also recognize that that parenting isn't the only issue that people are experiencing, and it's not to make it, make one lighter or make one heavy, or or trying to one up you with my woes, but just to be understanding. We're here,
right?
We're here.
I love that you ladies brought up that point, that oftentimes you don't know what challenges people have, right? So you can't assume because someone doesn't have kids that they don't have challenges, that they may actually be a caregiver. Children are not the only individuals that need caregiving. Or they may actually be breadwinning, but not necessarily have a husband, but have responsibilities in the family where they are supporting their parents, or supporting a sibling, or doing something that obligates their financial commitments. And so but however, I will put a pin in that. I will say that even though someone may not necessarily have financial commitments, it is still not the right of others to assume that you have allowances to their finances because they are single, or the single person in the family, or perhaps the person without kids in the family. Their earned income is earned income, which means they earned it. You did not work with them. They earned their income. And so it's wonderful when people are able to support each other, but do not approach people with the expectation that since, oh, you ain't got no kids, so yeah, why can't you help me out? Because you, one, may not necessarily know all their financial commitments, and they may have financial commitments, but even if they don't, let's be considerate and understand that people aren't obligated to give you whatever funds you feel. And this could be financial from family perspective, friends do it, a number of types of relationships. There are sometimes individuals that feel that they have a right to your earned income. So I do also like the fact that you ladies brought up that that we can do this together. And that's something we're trying to build, is making sure that people understand what village is like. It's a matter of having a perspective of each other's journey and respecting that journey, and not having expectations of that journey. One of the things that I think it was Kendra who brought this up, the comments about sort of, I wouldn't say comments of regret, but comments of longing for the life before having kids. And sometimes that's said, those statements, I've heard them said before, are said with a sense of almost like guilt that, wow, you have, I don't know what to liken it to, but a sense of guilt, like, oh, you have all this freedom, and somehow you're supposed to feel some guilt or some type of, I want to say empathy, for the fact that you have freedom and the other individual doesn't feel like they have freedom. And I don't think that's fair either. Because one, some people may not have freedom, may have other obligations, but even if they do have freedom, that is a decision they made. You know, having kids, you have that joy, that blessing that's considered to be the greatest blessing on this entire earth. There's nothing greater than having kids come into this world in terms of like a tangible gift, than to have a family, raise a family. That's perceived by society as one of the highest goals in life, right? Many societies perceive it that way. And maybe we should even talk about that. Because oftentimes it's perceived as some form of failure, some form of, you're an anomaly, that either you don't want kids or you have decided not to have kids, whether it's by choice or by biological force.
Yeah. What's wrong with you that you don't have kids? Like, what's wrong with you?
Right. What do you ladies think about that perspective, that there's oftentimes a question, you know, the fact that you don't have kids, whether you're dating, so on the dating scene, it's perceived like you're weird and you're odd and you're anomaly if you don't have kids after a certain time period. So usually by the time you're in your 30s, the expectation of society is that you should have started your family, or at least be actively pursuing your family.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's, you know, again, I think it's that whole, you're judging that person without knowing their story, you know, so you don't know, like, for that person, if they don't have a kid, well, what's that reason? You know, it could be something where they can't, right? Or for them, the situation just never presented itself, you know? And it's not that they don't long to have a kid. I mean, that's kind of like my situation. It's not that I don't want to have a kid, but by the same token, I still want kind of like the right environment, right? Like the right ingredients there. And it just so happens that hasn't presented itself, you know? So not, you know, I'll say it's through no fault of my own, but you know, like that's, of course not. But it's, you know, but that again, here's that judgment when you see that, you know, when you see that woman who doesn't have kids, every story isn't the same, you know, and saying, you know, and kind of putting that out there, for some people, that's a sensitive topic, you know, and then kind of touching on that, what you were mentioning the last time in terms of, you know, your earned income and what you have. What people don't realize is when you are single, all the bills fall on you. It's not as if you have like this extra income that you're dealing with. Uncle Sam says, oh, you don't have any kids? You don't need your money, do you? We're going to take the highest amount. You're going to be in that highest bracket. We have no earned income credit, no head of household, none of that. Like, at one point, so we have med students who come through and they kind of give you that med student supplement separate from your check, meaning they tax you as a consultant. And as a consultant, they're like, oh, well, we're going to get like almost 40%. Like, come on, who takes almost half your check? Uncle Sam.
Facts.
Yes, exactly. And so it's not as if just because you are single, it means that you have all this excess lying around, right? You know, when it comes to like your house, I have to pay my own mortgage. I have no one else to rely on. It'd be hard for me to go and say, hey, can you guys help with my mortgage this month? No, I have to make sure that's paid for. I have to pay for the car. I don't have an extra car in the household because it's just me. So, you know, oftentimes when you're looking at that whole, you know, if you have this fantasy of like, oh, this, like, you know, you guys are so free. Like, no, we have responsibilities too, you know, and it's just us, right? If you're dealing with that, or if you do have other people who rely on you. So yeah, when you see that person who's single, that state that, that state of not having kids, that could have come about in so many different ways, and I think you have to tread lightly as to why that is, how that came to be. So
sometimes people will try to assign your worth based upon the whatever you can fill in on a bubble. If you can fill in married, if you can fill, whatever, if it says how many kids you have or whatever, people will try to assign your worth to that. I've even had someone say to me, well, it's time for you to have some kids. And I'm like,
I've heard that. Mm-hmm.
I'm like, it's time for you to pick a bill to pay.
That part.
But not even just to be kind of sassy, but it just it's a part of life. And even with me, like I literally just turned 31. And a lot of my friends, most of us, even you have a good amount that are getting married, but then you have a lot of us that we just out here. That's all. We are just out here. We are teachers, we're doctors, we're lawyers, we're nurses, we're entrepreneurs, we're building brands, we're creative directors, we're doing all these things. And it's not to say like that we don't have goals and aspirations of becoming of being a wife or being in a in a committed relationship long term. And because even we could talk about marriage too, but even having a child. And sometimes, like you said, sometimes the ingredients just aren't I'm Southern, so I'm like, I understand all the ingredients, you need them. I'm not making macaroni and cheese if I'm missing something. I just can't do it. And so, but there is so many layers. And then I also, here's something that's interesting. I have a colleague. He actually I picked like his first week. He was one of my interns, and then we hired him on. And he was just like, I'm gonna have me a baby, like whatever the circumstances are, I'm gonna have it. And so he's absolutely serious, but we joke about everything because again, life is hard. And so we kind of make everything into a joke. And so it just reminded me, like, I just have so many conversations. I'm like, there are so many children that are already here. And that's my work. Yeah. Like my space at this moment in time is to care for the children that are already walking around, crawling around, crying around, driving around, running around.
You're right.
There's a space, and I can't take care of your 4 children, but these 24 that are assigned to me at this agency, I can assist and I can help pour into. So there's space.
Yeah. I like that you brought that up, because oftentimes that's something that I mentioned recently on social media, is that, we're focusing on certain topics and we're ignoring pre-existing issues. One of pre-existing issue is the fact that there are so many children in the system, and the statistics in terms of the duration of time that they spend in the system before they get adopted is so long. Yet I do know that adoption is not for everyone. Not everyone feels like they necessarily want to fulfill that role, and that's everyone's choice. But it's just really interesting to see sort of the dynamics between the longing and the need that's currently here. Something that you ladies touch on, I thought that was really, really good points, is it's also in terms of like the security, right? So to extend to what Dr. Louis was getting at in terms of your financial commitments, there's also security. Like if something, God forbid, were to happen to a single person, they have to make financial preparation that they can be taken care of, because there is no spouse who can handle the finances and make sure that they're okay, make sure that they have caretaking if they need it, make sure that they have hospital bills to pay for if they need it, make sure that they have their needs taken care of. So as a single person, you do have to save in those particular areas, which as a couple, you may not necessarily feel that level of urgency, though everyone should have some type of planning. But as a single person, you kind of feel like there is no safety net unless I create that safety net for myself. So there are very, very unique dynamics to both paths in life. And I think the assumption that being without kids or that type of responsibility, or being without spouse, that somehow your dynamics, like you receive this level of freedom. And that's not at all true for the far majority of people. So I thank you, ladies, for bringing up those topics. Moving forward, what do you anticipate because Kendra, you mentioned your coworker, and exactly what he said is exactly what's leading to the trend of conscious parenting, where friends are making agreements now to have children together because of like-mindedness in terms of morals. There are all these diversity of relationships that's now existing, with a trend away from sort of the nuclear family, and all these, different types of I don't want to say orientation, because I'm not talking about sexual orientation, but in terms of like just variety of relationships that are coming together for the purpose of raising kids together, void of a long-term relationship of any sorts. What do you ladies think about that trend?
I mean, I think it's it's kind of going to, I think, where we're trying to break social roles and gender roles, so I can definitely see where it fits,
Mm-hmm.
I just don't know how long term, right? Because it's one thing when they're one and they're two and you're making these decisions, but when you come with, these different types of and it's different types of relationships have existed all the time too. It's just putting this formal role to it, how sustainable is it, long term. Mm-hmm. But again, if you look at it, almost anything is not a guarantee, right? You get married, that's not a guarantee. You have a partner who you're with, that's not a guarantee. So, I mean, I definitely think if people see that this works for them, it's interesting. It's I think it's kind of, if they're going at it wholeheartedly. But yeah, I mean, nothing's guaranteed. So in that sense, how can I go and say this wouldn't work, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
I think for me, it's very interesting, because I'm thinking of it from the notion of they're still children. So when I do trainings professionally, mm-hmm. I bring this topic comes up. It's like, okay, so what do we do? And I said, what does a child need? A child needs, but its basic needs: love, food, shelter, education, safety, security. A child born into a non-traditional home, what would that child need? Mm-hmm. It's the same thing. Mm-hmm. So in terms of that, if the children are being taken care of, I'm all for it. Because regardless of the orientation, the nuclear family, the friendship, best friend, cousin, your big mama, boyfriend, I want the children taken care of.
Right.
That's that.
Right. I like that. I like that point. I like both points, because to your point also, Dr. Lee, relationships of all kind have issues, right? And when you don't have that underlying commitment, it may be beneficial, because then things are kind of outlined from the beginning, like, you do this is where we stand. Mm-hmm. But then there's also the fact that it's not devoid of conflicts. As Kendra mentioned, as you are raising the child, you still have to make determinations as to how you're raising that child. Right. And even if you choose someone who's like-minded, it's not really that much difference, because most people choose their long-term partners based on like-mindedness, based on similar morals, similar lifestyles or perspectives. So I don't know that it brings a fresh dynamic to the situation. I 100% agree with you, Kendra. It is all about what's good for the kids. Are the kids being cared for? And that's really all that matters. And on that note, we just want to remind everyone who's watching this, make sure you are a part of somebody's village. You don't necessarily have to be in a village in your family. You can be a village for your friends, or you can hit up agencies like Kendra's agency and help to mentor, shadow, or be a part of a village of someone you don't even know. So as we say here at HBC, it's all about building the village, because it takes what? A village to raise a child. So thank you, ladies, for hopping on today. If you have a public account that people can, if they were interested in following you to find out what your journey is like as a single woman, if you want to share, Kendra, let us know, where can they find you if they want to see what is Kendra up to, or perhaps contact you regarding how can I help with this agency with the children that you help to support.
Oh, thank you. My profiles everywhere are all public. So what you see is what you get is at Pooh, like the teddy bear, POOH, smiles, like my teeth. So I am at Pooh Smiles all one word.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. And I will definitely add that to the content of this video as well. So you'll be able to reach out to her and say, hey, Kendra, how can I help? How can I help these children? Dr. Louise, she's a little bit more low profile. Dr. Louise, do you have anything public? Let me see. I'll be shocked if she has anything
there.
public.
It's there, but yeah. The charts. It's the charts. They keep me busy. The charts.
She is. I promise you, she's always charting. So thank you, ladies.
But I will say, I mean, even for me, my where I have my hands and tentacles in, it's my local church. That's where I keep my hands, kind of local. So,
and that is the most traditional village of them all. It is the church.
I see the young kids there. So, when they're little, they may not like me. I'm too strict, but guess what? At some point, something clicks. Come on down. Let's go.
I love it. I love it. I love it.
That's hilarious.
The most traditional village structure of them all is the church. So thank you for following us. Thank you for watching this video. If you like this video, make sure you check out our other videos. And if you like the content that we shared today, make sure you click that button. You see that arrow that goes that way? That is the share icon. It helps us to get in front of the virtual world. And if you want to follow us at Healthy Bump Club on our Instagram account, that's where we share a lot of information, little clip bits on our educational topics. And if you want to hang out with us in our stories, that's where I see all of y'all up in those stories, because y'all like the entertainment, but it's all good. We're here for both of them. Make sure you follow our account at healthybump.club. Thank you for watching. And don't forget to put on the gear. I ran in here today, so I don't have my gear on, but don't forget to hit up our gear. Go to our info on the content below, and you will find our apparel line, because we are what? Apparel with a purpose. Love you for watching. See you next episode.